Welcome to the Water People podcast. Today, we're in conversation with esteemed elder and pipeline pioneer Gerry Lopez, who almost singularly defines style, flow, and grace in surfing waves of consequence. This episode is presented by the Pryor Family Foundation in partnership with Greening Australia, who believe that our personal, social, and economic well-being are inextricably linked with our land and sea. Greening Australia works to restore Australian land and waters for healthier, productive landscapes where people and nature thrive. Learn more about their work via greeningaustralia.org.au. Our podcast comes to you from the coastal land and waters of both the Bundjalung and Kabi Kabi nations. We'd like to acknowledge these traditional custodians and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We'd also like to extend that respect to all First Nations people this podcast ripples out toward. Hi, David.
Hello, Lauren.
How you doing today?
Fantastic.
Welcome back to the desk. This is the start of season 2 of the Water People podcast, and we had the incredible privilege of getting to sit down with Mr. Gerry Lopez.
That's right. Jelly, one of the legends in surfing who has pioneered lots of different aspects of the surfing organism, you know, like his unrivaled early days ability at the pipeline was just, and still is, a benchmark of style and ease and minimalism in surfing, and a very complementary style to the wave shape, you know, and being one of those incredible first crew to decode the pipe. You know, really decode it in terms of getting on the foam ball and getting spat out and everything, and sort of trailblazing that seems to be a bit of a theme in his life, you know, venturing out into other areas.
He is a pioneer in so many ways, isn't he? Like, I feel like surfing culture tends to shape representations of Gerry as this mystical style icon guru, but he was also a pioneer of the early surf industry. He was a Hollywood actor.
Yeah, and an entrepreneur with lightning bolt and everything. And then, the Hollywood venture was something I think everyone should have a first-hand experience of. Sabotage, whatever his name was. As
we'll dig it up. We'll
Conan's.
Dig up the,
well, he's Conan's. He's Arnold Schwarzenegger's sidekick in the Conan the Barbarian series, which, if you're like me, a child of the 80s, with a tough guy kind of dad. My dad had a flat top and loved to wear short shorts and tight singlets and show his big muscles, right? And so he would expose me to the Conan the Barbarian movies as a kid. And when I learnt that actually Conan's sidekick was Gerry Lopez many years later, it was just like kind of baffling that this total Zen pipe lord could also have gone down that route, and then the bizarre experience of life delivering me to a surf trip with Gerry in Cloudbreak. I don't know when, it was quite a few years ago now, but I got to ask him about that and what that was like doing a Hollywood movie with Arnie, and he was just full of the best stories. It's like you can go anywhere with Gerry, and I'm sure there'll be an incredible story. And that was just one area that I thought was really surprising, that he'd dived into the Hollywood world as well. And classic, like really such a rich life.
Yeah, I love that he's one of those elders that you can look to see what a long, healthy, really robust surfing life looks like. You know, he's managed to keep himself healthy and fit and still surfing, which is so cool. He was just telling us about river surfing in Oregon. And just what a huge inspiration to see that longevity is totally possible in a surfing life.
Which is an interesting one with him because, you know, you've got all kinds of different takes, you know, like you look at perhaps George over the hill here and he's just like, you know, every day you get to go out is a good day. And then you got Albie down the coast who's just the pure embodiment of surf stoke and joy and gratitude. And he's just there, happy no matter what the conditions are. They're all good waves. There's no such thing as a bad wave. And then you got Gerry and his sort of philosophy around not surfing to a 100% of your energy levels, always keeping some in the tank for tomorrow. And that's a really interesting philosophy, considering he is quite a deep thinker, and a lot of his philosophy comes from Eastern traditions and of yogic focus being about presence and staying present. But the whole surf to 3/4 of your ability or energy level, so that you can surf tomorrow is a little different to that. And it was fun.
Well, it seems like the kind of thing that comes with wisdom when you've been scorched and had your arms feel like they want to fall off when you're in remote Indonesian waves and jungles and trying to keep going.
100%, which is really quite interesting with Gerry, because he's renowned for shaping boards where they have kind of the camouflage looking spray on the deck. They're like all camo colors and stuff. It's not actually camo. It's a sort of mimic of water and light in the ocean that he started to put on the decks of his boards, so that when he was sitting out in the lineup at G-Land, the reflection off the board wasn't coming up and cooking him like doubly, because it's already so hot and the sun is so fierce there, and the sun sets over the lineup in the afternoon, so that at the end of the day is actually the brightest time where your eyes are just burning. And so he developed that idea of mimicking a natural type of play between water and light for the decks of his boards, which is also, to me, really interesting, because it ties into what is undoubtedly the birthplace of that whole surf for tomorrow theory for him, or philosophy, because Gerry was in G-Land with people like Peter McCabe and Jack McCoy and all these other classic personalities that are big and would have just been going 100% every day. But they would have hit the wall like all of us in the equatorial regions on like day 2 or 3, and then you're cooked. You're cooked for days after overdoing it. So I reckon knowing him, he would have seen that and realised he could probably have G-Land to himself for a few days while the rest of his crew are just hiding in the shade and keeping their eyes closed for as long as possible. And he would have had it all to himself, and that is a serious payoff. That's like...
that's wisdom there,
That's wisdom, exactly. So I think that's just... He's just a dude that is deep in all of that stuff that we celebrate with his personality in surfing, but he's also just such a surf rat and a fun rat and such a jovial character and such a grommet type of stoke and lightness.
Yeah, the story that he tells us at the beginning to our, the question that we pose to all of our guests, I found his response really interesting, because he really speaks to the fact that your relationship to the water, our relationship to the water and to surfing, changes over time. It's not the same. We fall in more deeply into love, and then sometimes we go out of orbit a little bit, and that's okay. I don't know, that just really spoke to me, and I liked that reminder and I've experienced that myself in my own surfing life. Like sometimes you feel really onto it with checking the conditions every single day or knowing exactly what the wind's going to be doing, and then sometimes your surfing takes a back seat and it can come back around again and again and again, and it's always this outlet for play and spontaneity and beauty in our lives.
Yeah, well, I really love hearing you say that, because I don't feel like that at all. And it's to me, it's like a daily, weekly, just total absorption in it. You know that about me.
You're one of the most loyal people I've ever known, especially to surfing. I mean, to me too, but
it's just so it's really interesting to hear someone like Gerry, who's been into the depths of tube riding, the depths of decoding some of the most mystical waves on the planet, and that he could still go to the mountains, or he could turn to kite surfing
and
or
feel
all
fulfilled,
kinds of stuff,
but in a completely different way. I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We don't want to give away too much. We don't want to give away too much,
but it's something to appreciate when you get to hear from someone like Gerry, who's lived such a rich and varied life, but really, yeah, at the core of it is a surfing life, and that feeling of magic that's around him, like there's just some spirits that feel like there is real magic there, and I always remember feeling that when I'd bump into Gerry on the North Shore in Hawaii every December. When the pipeline contest would happen, he would be brought there by the sponsors of the event, and he would have shaped an incredible surfboard for the winner of the pipe contest. And I always felt like I was special when he would see me, and he would give me a hug, and we would have a quick chat, and I always felt like, oh, we've got this really cool relationship. But then I remember one of those years, after quite a few of those years, seeing him do the same thing to everyone else that he met on the North Shore.
He's got the mana,
And
doesn't
it was,
he?
yeah, it was,
he talks about in the
beautiful.
conversation about Duke and feeling the same way about Duke Kahanamoku.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was funny though, because I was like, I'm not special at all. He's like that with everyone. But it was a very admirable thing to see, because, a lot of people want a lot of his energy when he's out in the world, especially in Hawaii. And just to see him meet each person really beautifully, and not like over the top or anything,
With presence.
Yeah, just presence, and just really a real sweetness.
Yeah. Well, we're so grateful to Gerry for sharing some of his time and energy with us. And just a reminder, we've been recording amidst COVID restrictions, so we had to record over the internet. The sound quality gets kind of glitchy, it gets kind of sketchy at times, so please forgive any of those dropouts, and hopefully we'll be back to recording live very soon. We hope you enjoy this chat with Gerry Lopez. We begin every conversation with the question about a time or experience after which you were never the same. Do you have a story like that you'd like to share?
That's really a very, very good question. And, when I think about it, I think it kind of covers my whole life, that it's just been one thing after another, and nothing's ever been the same afterwards. I think I've discovered that I'm kind of a obsessive kind of person. And, the first real big obsession for me was, of course, surfing. And it lasted for a long time, and it was so much a part of me and all about me that I never really thought of it as an obsession. And obviously I never was the same again, because I was, high school, I think everyone was kind of headed down a different path. You finished high school, you went to college, and then you studied something and you got a job. But how does anyone know when they're like 16, 17 years old what they want to be when they grow up? So I thought I wanted to be an architect, and so I studied that all through college and everything. And then it was during college that the real obsessiveness of surfing kind of settled on me. And I was in my last semester of my senior year in college, and I just started a surfboard business. We had a shop called Lightning Bolt, and it was really a good winter. And the surf was better than going to class. So I just kind of quit going to class and just went surfing. But anyway, that kind of kept on, and in like 1980, Tony and I had just got together, and windsurfing came along, and we were living in Maui, and we just fell into that, and that became another obsession, and nothing was ever the same after that for a little while too. I went through that whole thing where after a while, I didn't even put my surfboards in the back of the truck. I just had the windsurfing gear, and you could sleep in because the wind didn't come up till like 10 o'clock or so, and that, lasted for, I don't know, almost maybe a couple of years. And then slowly the surfboard started going back in the truck because I'd go down and the surf would be good, and I'd go surfing. It wasn't like I didn't go surfing during that period, but if it was windy, then, I just go sailing. And then if there was no wind, then I'd go surfing. But eventually, the windsurfing equipment didn't even go in the truck, and it was just a surfboard again. And, so that was different from then on again. and then, it's kind of been like that for me, one thing after another. The next thing was snowboarding. And that was in, I think, 89 or 90. And the next thing you know, we leave Maui and we move up here to Central Oregon, 200 miles from the ocean. And everything really wasn't the same after that, because all I was thinking about, and, Tony was thinking the same thing, that we just wanted to go snowboarding every day. And then the next thing where nothing was kind of ever the same afterwards was we got this place down in Baja, Mexico, on the East Cape, kind of near the tip there at Cabo. And, I was really into getting back in the ocean. Tony and I had been pretty active kiteboarding, and that was a big draw. And, the wind's really good down there in the winter. So all of a sudden our interest in the snow kind of started to fade a little bit, or just maybe wane. And so, we went down there and we bought a place and started spending time down there. And mostly I was doing stand-up paddle surfing. And, January, February, there's not really that much south swell action. But, end of February, beginning of March, all of a sudden the surf started to get really good. And, I'm going out, me and my buddy down there, Jeff King, on our stand-up boards. And I looked at him one day, I go, hey, we got to get off these things, man. This is cheating. We got to get back on our surfboards. And we did, that was another big change, that nothing was ever the same again. And it, so I don't know, I guess it kind of, life goes in cycles, and I'm back to kind of where I started from. And it's good. I love it.
Gerry, does that mean we're going to see you paddle out at Pipe next winter?
Well, I've definitely thought about it, but, I look at that crowd there and just go, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to hear you talk about the diversity in your real passions and I guess, as you say, obsessions over the years, and sharing that with Tony, and also sort of the contrast to that, knowing that, when we watch people surf, I feel like we get a real insight into their spirit or their personalities. And when we watch you surf, we see a real economy of movement, a real sort of Zen efficiency. When I've surfed with you at G-Land and Cloudbreak, and obviously the imagery over the years of you surfing, there's a refined sort of simplicity to what you're doing. When you have these interests and so much range in your pursuits over the years, what's your feeling on that experience of having these things in your life, but also seeking a simple life? do they contradict each other, or is that something that can coexist in a healthy way for you over the
Well,
years?
I think that, it's all kind of the same path, because I think like we've been here in the mountains for almost 28 years, and they went by in a hurry. Um, but, thinking about it and looking at it, I realized that this was a part of my life that I really needed, because, the ocean, I mean, definitely has its appeal and attractions and its beauties and its energy. But the mountains are a whole different kind of energy. And I think what I found here, which was harder to find in the ocean, was a sense of stillness. And I think that my life needed that. And, I've often felt that all of us, that we have a destiny, our own roads of life. And, I mean, we get to make choices, but it seems to me that really a lot of of what we do are kind of meant to be, and, what we're supposed to do. And like, there's already a script that's been laid out. And, sometimes you think you made the wrong choice, but then, you go down that path, and time passes, and then you realize, wow, I'm really glad I came this way, because I almost went the other way. And so I really believe that, there's a lot of predestination in a person's life. And I think that this time in the mountains gave me that stillness that is really important. I mean, it's just, the yin and yang. I mean, it's one extreme or the other, but the Chinese say that, health and harmony is created when yin and yang are in balance. And that's what they call the Tao. That's the middle. And that's kind of where you want to be. And for me, the mountains and the ocean were the yin and the yang. And, I needed both to find that middle ground. And I feel pretty good about having that, that, yeah, I mean, it's all good, but.
In speaking about the idea of predestiny, makes me think of your grandfather, who was a Japanese plantation worker. He worked on sugarcane fields on Oahu. Is that right?
On Kauai, yes.
On Kauai. But he got a lucky break, didn't he?
He did, because he was smart, I guess.
Yeah. Smart and predestined maybe for a different future than what working the fields could have carried him toward.
Yeah, I think that he, was born with that kind of special leadership qualities that, he had a mission, and he did it. I mean, tragically, his life was pretty brief. He had a heart attack when he was like in his early 50s. And but he did a lot in the time he was here. And he was really special to me, even though I was pretty young when he passed on, but I remember him well.
And then continuing on that theme of predestiny, your parents marrying, your dad was a New Yorker, is that right? And a newspaper editor, and your mom, of course, of the Japanese lineage, and she became a teacher. But they married in a time when that would have been so radical to be a mixed race couple. Were you privy to any of the public sort of politics of their coupling?
Well, no, but my dad was a haole, and my mother's family was very traditional, even though it was a local Japanese, Hawaii Japanese. Uh, you didn't marry outside your race, or not many did, and she like hung a big cutback and went her way, and it really shocked my grandparents, mostly my grandfather, because he had his idea of the way things should be, I guess. And they didn't speak for a couple of years, and then finally, even though all her brothers and even her mother and her brothers and sisters all accepted my dad, and they all got to be good friends. And eventually my grandfather, broke down because my mom was the oldest girl. So, in Japanese, that's Anisan. And I was the firstborn son, grandson into the family. But I mean, even before I came along, my father had already been, you know, accepted and embraced by the whole family. So, it took a bit because it was kind of shocking at that point in time. My grandfather's fear was that, you know, soldiers would come and, have a relationship with a local girl and then leave, go back to the mainland is what they called it, and leave the girl. And so that's what he was concerned about. And of course that didn't happen. My father loved Hawaii, and he never went back, I mean, to New York. So
This is kind of a tangent, but having lived as an ethnic minority in Hawaii, I'm just wondering, with all that's happening in the US right now, with all the police brutality and violence we're seeing against the Black American community, I'm just wondering, if history had gone slightly differently, if that could have been you or your family being targeted by such radical discriminations and prejudice. Do you have particular compassion or feelings about the state of racial inequalities in the US right now?
well, I mean, it's tragic. You think everybody's kind of grown way beyond that, and that, understanding that color of your skin doesn't matter. It's what's inside that counts. And, if you just give people a chance, that you might find that, the person that you're most worried about can become your best friend. And I think this is something that, has been around a long time. I mean, up until the end of World War II, all the Japanese people, all the non-white people, most of them were plantation workers, the Chinese, Koreans, Puerto Ricans, Portuguese. They were all second-class citizens. They were not allowed to vote, and it was only after the war that all changed. And so, it's not far behind us, but you have to, I mean, I don't know. I think our purpose here on earth, in this lifetime, is to discover our higher mind and find it, and become aware of it, and eventually learn to use it, and not get sucked into our lower mind, which is the anger, the hate, the anxiety, the all those terrible things that we are seeing being played out right now. And this is this is difficult, I mean, I think as surfers, we are given a very, very special gift that is very, very similar to a yoga practice. And, you know, we need to spread the wisdom that this gift has allowed us to gain, that, you know, there's a lot more to life than hating people.
Gerry, I really have treasured the writings you've done over the years and the way you've shared how surfing can play into the experience of our higher mind, or those pursuits like snowboarding and kite surfing and everything, windsurfing, all of that has some sort of contribution to experiencing that state of being, that deeper sense of self. And I was just curious to know, was that something that you started to cultivate sort of via your own interests as a young fella, or were there some elders in Hawaii, I don't know, in like the Paul Strow kind of club of people, or any of the Beach Boys? Was there conversations like that happening around you as a young fella that sort of steered you in that direction of having some sort of reflection on the surfing experience?
Not really, I mean, my generation of surfers in Hawaii revered Paul Strow, and the reverence was, more than for his surfing, which was unbelievably outstanding. It was for his elegance and grace when he was back on the beach. I mean, he's like, a saint of surfing, but he had a special relationship with Duke Kahanamoku. And, Duke has always been, well, mostly among us. I mean, most of the world thinks of him as the father of surfing. I think he would actually scoff at, that definition. That we looked up to him as the ambassador of aloha. And he just exuded this sense of aloha. And, Paul had, like I said, this very special relationship. He was very close to the Duke. And so he, in a lot of ways, is the same person. He has that deep rooted sense of aloha. And, you just stand next to him and you just like feel it, man. You just go, oh man, well, I feel better just standing next to you. You don't even have to say anything. You don't even have to look at me. And that aloha was, a manifestation of what the Hawaiians called mana, which the yogis call prana. And even though these are cultures from different sides of the planet, that are really seemingly unconnected in any way. I mean, they're really far away from each other. They're talking about this same energy that's really the basis of all life. And their word for it is almost the same word. I mean, how does that happen? And that's one of the things that the Hawaiian culture revered, was this sense of mana, and how it manifested in different people, intelligence or great strength, or in the case of Duke, which, he was both intelligent and strong. I mean, he was, an Olympics champion, but in aloha, of having this aura and this great field of energy, of aloha energy. And the Duke had it. And, he inspired us, mostly for me, and, my guys was through Paul, because Paul Strauss was like our connection to Duke Kahanamoku, or George Downing. They were the ones that passed down to us this, sense of what we should be doing. So there was that, part that started through surfing. And then, I was fortunate that I found my yoga practice at a pretty young age. I think I was 19 years old. And a lot of things that I questioned or had questions about started to make sense, because I look back now on, the whole wisdom of yoga, and pretty much any question, deep question that anyone could have, the yogis can answer. And they can answer in a logical way that you just have to go, whoa, that's got to be right. And I think, that's why it's so special.
I was just reading actually about this lecturer of philosophy and religion in Boston. His name's Peter Kreeft. He's a Christian sort of lecturer there, and he has written, I think around 100 books on spirituality and all kinds of directions and pagan stuff, or just so much material. But he also surfs, and
Wow.
he writes about spirituality and surfing, and he talks about sort of mysticism and mystical experiences. And he has this list of 14 features of Stoke. And as you go down the list, every single one of these attributes, it sounds like what we are aiming to achieve when we try to explain surfing, to people who don't surf, or to each other at times. And I just had to zoom in on that and think about the very center of the surfing experience, and, well, quite literally, is the tube, and the experience of being locked inside the pit, and how difficult it is to wrap words around that experience. And then also wondering, what role in our life does that experience play? Is there anything to glean from that? Can we learn from that? Does that make life more wonderful? And I just wanted to perhaps prod you a little bit around that, because from my mind, as someone who's obsessed with tube riding, I look at how you cracked the code for yourself at Pipe, and also, no doubt, many, many moments at G-Land and Indo and all places over the world where you've been locked inside the wave. I just wondered if you'd reflected on that a lot over the years, and if there are any insights gained from, the center of surfing, the tube riding experience.
Very much so.
Are there any words that fit?
Oh, yeah. But it comes back to yoga. Yoga can be roughly broken down into proper exercise, proper breathing, proper relaxation, proper diet. And, your surfing lifestyle, my surfing lifestyle, is all that too. It's easy to see that, okay, yeah, plenty exercise, good food, plenty relaxation after you're surfed out, and, proper breathing. You got to breathe. But the thing in yoga, besides those four, is positive thinking, and meditation. And you see, this is a part of surfing that is often, I guess, overlooked because it really is a part of surfing. I mean, you know that the state of mind it takes for you to get in the tube is total absolute focus and concentration. You can't be thinking of anything else. In fact, you can't really be thinking of anything. You just have to be there. You know, it's just thinking's too slow. So what happens is, just like in deep meditation, your mind slows down. And in fact, at some point, I'm sure you've had plenty of times, big, deep tubes where all of a sudden time seems to slow down. I mean, I'm sure you have, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, time is a function of the mind. So when that mind stops, and time stops. And that is the state of mind that, you know, anyone who's deep into meditation, I mean, Buddha, anyone is trying to achieve. And, you know, as surfers, we get this free lunch of that mind state. And there are times in that mind state, I'm sure you have experienced it many times yourself and maybe were unable to explain it. But when that lower mind slows down and eventually stops, then your higher mind, your intuitive mind begins to operate. And that's where all the power is. You know, that's the one where you don't have to think. You just know what to do. And you just, well, you just do what needs to be done. And you come out of the tube or you don't. But, you know, that's where we're all trying to get. And we get this so many times surfing. I mean, in order to surf successfully, you really have to have that deep focus. And
That makes me curious, though, Gerry. So, uh, given that we can sit down in any space or stand or whatever the body's doing and assume a meditative state, you know, we get out of our own way, and what's there is sort of unity experience or oneness or whatever we like to call it. But I guess it's a quite a blissful state. We can experience that in meditation without having to go to all the trouble of reading weather, making surfboards, having leg ropes or not, you know, wetsuits and boardies, all this stuff, and finding a wave somewhere. You know, in some ways, it is this free lunch, like you're saying, the surfing experience, gifting these moments to us. But in other ways, it's kind of complicated and quite an effort to get there. What is it that brings you, I guess, the motivation to go and do that when I'm sure you have your morning yoga practice and you sit and you pretty much experience that state anyway, regardless of the external situation you're in? Is there a specific reason you would choose that sort of long pursuit of surfing to have those moments?
well, I think you know very well that it's never about the last wave for someone who's surfing. It's all about the next wave. You know, that's something that a lot of people, even a lot of surfers, have difficulty understanding. But then, they have difficulty understanding our compulsion to keep surfing, to keep doing it, God, that's all you guys do, man. But, there's something really special about it. And I think that the Hawaiians were, even though there's really certainly no written evidence of it, but they were on to, getting to that state of higher mind through surfing. You can't understand nature really if you're trying to understand it objectively. You have to feel it and sense it and use your subjective senses to understand the what nature's saying. It's kind of trippy.
Totally
it's
trippy.
a paradox, isn't it?
Gerry, I can't relate to yours and Dave's experience of big, deep tube riding so much, but what I can relate to is an idea that I've read that you've spoken about a little bit, and I'm just going to read you a short passage here. You said, or you wrote, "When I was at the 73 World Contest in San Diego, I thought I surfed pretty good, but I finished in last place. My girlfriend at the time said I didn't win because she said I didn't do anything, but that was kind of my style. I kind of stood there and let the wave do everything. The small waves didn't do much, so I didn't do much either." And that I can relate to. And specifically, I've heard through a mutual friend of ours, Leah Dawson, who I grew up surfing with in Florida. From being in Florida and being so wave starved, I developed a practice of trying to ride waves all the way to the beach. And I was out surfing the other day and I found myself doing it again, stepping off on the sand and just trying to be with that wave energy for as long as it would let me be there. And Leah mentioned that you might have a similar practice.
Yeah, I think that's what the old Hawaiian style was. I think that's what Duke and George Downing and Paul Stroud, they always sat the furthest out, to catch the wave where it started, and they rode the wave to the very end, where it stopped. And I think in that way they felt, and I feel the same, that that's how you honor that wave, by, joining with it and, finding harmony with it and continuing, that yoga, because that's actually what yoga means, is joining or union until it's over. And usually that's where it ends, at the sand. The most interesting thing about waves is that the water's not moving. It's energy moving through the water. And so really, when we say we're riding waves, what we're riding is that energy. We're connecting with it, and we're trying to, in our each own individual way, find some kind of harmony with it to be able to ride it. I think Dave said it right in the beginning too. My style, you just stand there and try and be with the wave. But I forgot to mention that one of the really key moments in my life where something happened and nothing was ever the same afterwards was the birth of my son. And I think that, Lauren, you being a mom, that's tube riding. You know, that energy that you feel, you know, for your child is the same energy that, you know, we hope to get. Dave and I get a tube ride, and in a way, you got a better deal because the tube rides don't really last that long.
This is really good to hear, Gerry, because since Lauren gave birth to our little boy Minoa, he since he's been here actually, and she's gotten back into surfing, her obsession is now to get properly barreled, to get tubed. And
Good.
as a longboarder from Florida, you know, those sort of opportunities aren't that abundant growing up there, and now living here in Australia on these sand bottom point breaks, there's this new passion from Lauren to experience that. And so I'm glad that you just mentioned that, because that'll give that another little push along.
Yeah. And you know what, Lauren? It ain't all that it's cracked up to be.
I don't believe that for a second.
One of these days you'll get a chance to go to Kelly's Wave, and that's you know, the place where everybody gets a tube ride.
Is it the same though? Is a
Totally.
technically made machine tube? It's exactly the same.
Because it's all a feeling, you know. I mean, however it happens, it comes down to a feeling.
Which is interesting, actually, because last night I was looking at a number of sort of bigger boards that I have here in my little board shed with a good friend of mine, lifelong friend of mine, and we were talking about how this very pulled-in pintail, pulled-in nose, very, I guess, traditional sort of gun from the 90s that he shaped for me as a kid is in the rafters next to what I'm riding now in Big Waves, which is a wider board with more curve and just a twin fin gun, and it's what I would call now the favorite 8.6 gun I've ever had. But when I jumped back on his sort of very pintail pulled in single fin sort of gun just a couple of years ago, it felt so twitchy and it felt so narrow and easy to lay over on its rail. And we were laughing that it was a matter of perspective that had changed the way this board felt, given that the board hasn't changed at all. It's been sitting there in the racks for, you know, a few decades now. And we were just sort of laughing at how through the experience of riding stand-up paddle boards, through riding all kinds of different shapes these days, stretched fishes and all kinds of stuff, that it had radically changed my perspective on this object that hadn't changed at all. So when you were just saying that, you know, it's a matter of sort of perspective and how you see it, I just wonder about that with your surfing relationship these days, given that you are still in Oregon there. What's changed? Has anything changed? Like you talk about looping back to earlier days of surfing right now. Is there anything we can look out for as younger folk, you know, in this surfing life, to keep that stoke alive and, I don't know, just to keep a fresh perspective?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to send you a little video of, I went surfing today in the river.
Oh, yeah. Great.
You know, I think I had just as much fun as I've ever had at the pipeline. I mean, I didn't get any big barrels, but, you know, for me at this point in my life, it'll do. And it made me happy. And I think that's really all you can hope for. You know, to find something that's guaranteed to make you happy. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to, and maybe it won't do it every single time, But some of the times, maybe most of the times, shoot, maybe all of the times, and that can't be a bad thing.
The Water People podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Sanuk. In 1997, founder Jeff Kelly started out with one simple goal: to make people smile and to encourage them to pass it on. Sanuk has been advocating for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades, while crafting some of the comfiest footwear around. Thanks, Sanuk, for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com. Thanks also to Gerry McNeil Concepts Americas, who build cosmic surfboards for cosmic people. We love Gerry McNeil's enthusiasm for building boards, and especially his passion for combining recycled and plant-based materials to craft boards that prioritize durability, sustainability, and high performance. Check out the gallery of boards currently available in the Americas via their website, GerryMcNeilConcepts.com. Gerry, I was reading some of the articles that you wrote in the late 60s for the Honolulu Advertiser. And
really?
In one of those, you wrote about some of the standout women who had won a local contest, Sharon Weber and Joey Hamasaki. And I was just wondering and really curious to know who you saw as the standout female surfers of your generation and why.
Well, I mean, in the early 70s, Sharon Weber and I were in the same surf club, and she was the most competitively successful surfer. She won that world championship in Johanna in 1970. And she also, I think it was 1972, when they had it in San Diego, won it again. And, I think she still goes surfing. I think Surfer's Journal is just doing an article about her because she's one of the unsung heroes of women surfing.
She's not a name that really anyone would know these days.
I know, and that's sad because she was a great surfer. And I mean, that year, Jimmy Blears won the men's on the world titles in San Diego in 72, and Sharon won the women's. Nobody even knows, that they were the world champions. I mean, that's okay. And honest to God, Jimmy's gone now, but I bet Sharon doesn't even care, which is really the beauty of, her and her surfing. It was just something she did that made her feel good. And I think even more than in California, I mean, there was a whole group of California women surfers as well, but there's always been, really great women surfers. And I mean, there's these old stories in ancient Hawaiian history of women surfing champions, that these women would outsurf the men. And Dave, do you know Aaron Napoleon?
Yeah.
His mom was one of the great Hawaiian women surfing champions. And she, won the Makaha contest. And, this was back in the 1950s.
Wow.
Yeah. So, there's always a lot of great girl surfers in Hawaii. And now, I mean, girl surfing is totally part of the whole tapestry, and some of them you better look out. I mean, my son Alex's girlfriend, she can surf circles around me. You remember Leah when we went to G-Land?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, she doesn't slow down. She doesn't shy away from any of those sort of waves. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, she's like you, I mean, you can put her on any surfboard ever and, figure out how to ride it and rip on it, just like you. I mean, it doesn't. The surfboard doesn't matter.
No. No, well, that's that's another area of surfing that's so subtle and beautiful, is then you're getting into the body surfing realm and just the immersion and being a part of that space. The surfboard doesn't matter at all, which is interesting, because then it does too, because we love to shape boards and ride them. It's that cheeky paradox again.
I know. I've been riding, after we went to G-Land that time and I watched you ride that little fish, I've been riding a lot of twin fins. And Alex really likes twin fins. Almost all his boards are either single or two fins, So
yeah, it's interesting. Just a few days ago, a few people around here are really becoming obsessed with two fins, and I personally haven't been able to ride anything else other than that for most of my life. And just the other day, I had one of my beautiful Aquila Ipa 20s here, and a friend's like, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, you look at dolphins, look at sharks. They just got those two fins on their sides, those pectoral fins. Of course that works." And just sort of turned around and walked away like it was perfectly obvious.
maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. But it's wonderful to be able to speak with people like yourself who have already pursued so many avenues and experienced so many diverse aspects of the surfing experience, the ocean experience. And I know for Lauren and I, one of the things we were really excited about to speak with you is just sort of what's mattered over the years with surfing for you. Like there's been a lot of stuff that's been spoken of and photographed and written about you and your surfing experience. And there's also been a lot of pursuits that you've chased after, given that you're a shaper and surfboard business and then all other things, like different pursuits outside of surfing. And I guess we were just wondering, when you look through the range of experience you've had over your life, just some of the things that bubble up to really matter and that are, I guess, at the forefront of reflection for you.
Well, I think I already said it, it's about that next wave. What that wave is supposed to be like has begun to matter less and less as time has gone on, that it doesn't have to be a big tube or even a big wave, it's just any wave. It's just making that connection with the energy of it and then, trying to have a friendly, harmonious connection and just flowing with it. And that's been, the beauty of it and the importance of it too, as well. And it just, as time goes on, it just becomes more and more self-evident that, that's, that's all it is. And, we find out that the answers to the biggest, deepest, heaviest questions we have are usually quite simple in the end, when we discover that answer, and that, it doesn't really matter that much.
Oh, thanks for your time, Gerry, and
thank you so much.
It's a real honor for us to share some story. And I've got a dork out here because I had one specific thing I wanted to ask you about. We've just had an amazing run of swell here, and actually the south swells that are probably hitting you all there on the west coast have been originating here too. We've just been getting constant surf. It's our really beautiful time of year for surf, but literally it's just been like a surf hypnotism sessions where we've been getting these tubes that are so long, and this, the Kira style waves here that do that. They're not tall, but they're thick and they just spin and just last week we had like a 10-day straight run where I was telling Lauren how I had spiral brain. I'd close my eyes and all I could see was just these spinning vortexes. And then I thought of you and I was thinking, surely Gerry and McCabe and whoever else was in G-Land would have had the same sort of thing. Did you, like, Speedies must have played with your mind a bunch when you were spending time there?
Yeah, and you couldn't go to sleep, and finally I figured out the only way to do it was maybe like the reef would pop out, in a part of the tube, and you'd have to just, like, in your dream, dive headfirst into that reef, and then then you could go to sleep.
That's great. Oh, that's funny. I've been calling it mind melt for a few years, where it's like, for me, if you get to the 10-second realm of being locked inside a tube,
wow,
beyond that, it's like the brain can't cope with the stimulation anymore, and that's general. It's different for all of us, I guess. Some of us will jump off 2 seconds into or before even we enter the tube, but that I wasn't looking at you, Lauren, when I said that.
That's me. I'm working on it.
But I was curious to see if that was something you'd experienced either there or in Hawaii, like if it was either like long tubes where you felt that sort of that overload, or if it was big gnarly tubes in Hawaii where you'd felt that.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever regarded it as an overload so much. It was just an overload only in the sense that, when you're trying to go to sleep at night and all you saw was that cylinder spinning, that the only way to stop it was to crash.
Yeah. Makes me feel good to hear you say that, because I was definitely spinning my wheels over the last week and wondering if that was okay or not. So,
no, what it is, I believe, is that that's the ultimate connection with that energy, and that's some pretty strong energy. Usually you're just kind of skirting the edges, the fringes of it, and it's easy to leave behind. You go in, say maybe see you tomorrow, but when you get into that such intensity of that energy, it takes so much focus to be there that the full power of it really enters you and becomes a part of you. You become a part of it, and so it's hard to release, to let go. And you don't get that opportunity that much, and at some point you'd be like me, you go, wow, man, wow, that sounds really good.
Thanks to Gerry for showing us what a long, healthy, and meaningful surfing life can look like. Learn more about Gerry Lopez on Instagram at Gerry Lopez Surfboards. Special thanks always to our sound engineer and in-house musician, Shannon Soul Carroll. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my partner in rhyme, Dave Rastovich, thanks for making the time to listen with us. We'll be continuing the conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast. You can find every episode on our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com.